let's start with, I'll go from 5 to 1. To me, the fifth greatest bass player of all time is Steve Harris of Iron Maiden. I know some people are surprised. Maybe they would think I would have him number one or really high. I think he's really, really great, but I think the four above him are superior. That said, Steve Harris is also an incredible, arranger, composer, songwriter. Wrote a lot of really great songs in Maiden's catalog and history. He's changed a lot over the years as far as his writing style, but nonetheless, he created arguably the most, is there a more successful touring and merchandising operation than Iron Maiden? Of course, he did it alongside Rod Smallwood, Bruce Dickinson, and a really great team, Andy Taylor, and that whole, monster that is Iron Maiden and Sanctuary. But ultimately, you have to, as a whole, his entire catalog, it's not just a bassist. So as a bassist, though, just simply, he's got a really unique way that he does stuff. A lot of people don't know, but he uses flat wound strings, and he uses a maple necked Fender, usually P bass, and he gets kind of a unique sound in the way that he EQs everything. It's got a lot of top end in it, and upper mid, but it's very defined in almost a glassy, clanky kind of way. It's a very unique sound and very much his sound. He definitely has something that really works for him and for Iron Maiden, and I think it's very distinct. And that's a hard thing to do as a bass player, is to have a distinct tone. So in that respect, Steve Harris is number 5 for me, and a phenomenal influence on me. When I was a teenager and when I was first wanting to play bass, he, along with another guy on this list, had a lot to do with me going and getting my first bass guitar. I think Live After Death, watching that over and over when I was a teenager, really influenced me, and I think it was because the bass, Steve showed me how the bass could be so melodic and how it could serve both the rhythm section dynamics and the melody dynamics. And he did it. He was a really great bridge piece between both. And the balance was phenomenal, and it really inspired me. So Steve Harris is number 5 on my list. Number 4, greatest bass player of all time for me, in hard rock, rock, and heavy metal, has got to be Geezer Butler of Black Sabbath. I got to put Geezer above Steve. Number 1, he came before him, well before him. But 2, I think he's got a lot of really, really distinct bass lines that I think are just as important to Black Sabbath as Iommi's riffs. I think the formation of heavy metal happened with both of them, not just Iommi. I think Geezer's bass playing, his approach, the way that he mirrored Iommi in many ways, his tone, his finger attack. I always loved Geezer's bass tone. I always felt like it had all this great tube grind on it, and he really hits the strings hard and really digs in and gets that sound he coaxes every bit of tone out of the instrument. And he's just a monster presence, and his bass lines are just absolutely legendary. You just go back in the Sabbath catalog, and I feel like Geezer's bass lines are just as memorable as Iommi's guitar riffs. I think they're just as important too. Even you go back to those early records, whether it's From Hand of Doom to all the songs on the first record. There's so many moments there in the very early aspects of Sabbath where I felt like almost the bass was carrying some songs and the more memorable riff of the song, and that goes on throughout Sabbath's catalog. Iommi and Geezer both kind of trade places with that for me. But, Geezer's just such an incredible bass player, whether it's just the simple intro to the Rit with that phaser or whatever it is on the bass, all the way to some of the stuff that came later on Technical Ecstasy and stuff like that. I really think, and then of course the stuff with Dio and Heaven and Hell and stuff like that. His bass always had such a monolithic kind of presence in Sabbath's music and was such an important aspect of the foundation of the Black Sabbath sound. So for me, as much as I grappled a bit with it, at the end of the day, I had to put Geezer ahead of Steve Harris for multiple reasons, and those are them. So Geezer Butler is at number 4. Number 3, greatest hard rock metal bass player of all time. I have to go with Geddy Lee from Rush. Now, Geddy and Steve were probably, along with my top 2, the main reasons that I picked up the bass. Geddy Lee especially. I mean, when I discovered Permanent Waves for the first time, listening to it on a huge stereo system, and that bass tone on Natural Science, and the breakdown in Free Will, and it was just like life-changing to me. Like the bass, it was like Steve also in the sense that it was both this great bridge between the rhythm section dynamic and the melodic dynamic, which I think a lot of times songwriters end up bass players because of that. It's kind of in a lot of ways, the main bridge piece of the whole band. But it also showed me how good bass tone can be while playing fast and precise. I always really, really loved Geddy's bass tone, and Geezer's bass tone more than Steve Harris's of Iron Maiden. I know that might be sacrilege to some, but I just really like when there's a little bit more digging into the pickup and a little bit more of that tube grit and saturation and general just top in kind of grind on the bass. Geddy was just a master at finding the balance and dynamics between that. He always has. Doesn't matter what bass he plays. He got a little clean when he was playing wall basses in the late 80s and early 90s, but he still managed to coax a lot of mid-range out of that bass. Again, it's all about the finger attack and the finger technique. But then on a jazz bass for many years now, which I play now exclusively, he's done a phenomenal job, and he inspires me constantly with his tone and playing. So, Geddy Lee and Rush in general, probably the biggest reason I picked up an instrument, which I know there's a lot of bands that share a similar sentiment. There's no question that Geddy Lee and Rush are probably the main reason I am a musician. And Geddy Lee is very strongly at number 3. I just couldn't put him above my top 2. And my top 2 are pretty much, in my opinion, the two. It's almost 1A, 1B. They're royalty, and they are really the roots of all hard rock bass, heavy metal bass, is these two guys, in my opinion. No more than them. There's other guys, sure, that played a role, but these two guys were the main maestros, the Ichiban top dogs, man. These guys are number 1 in my book. So number 2, or almost 1B, is Chris Squire from Yes. Chris Squire from Yes, Roundabout, is probably the most famous bass line on a radio song that was a progressive bass line ever. Roundabout was all over FM radio when I was growing up and is still a staple song in classic rock. But it's not just that. I mean, if you go and you get albums like Relayer, you get albums like the Yes album, even some of that early stuff. You dive into Close to the Edge. I mean, Yes songs. When I was recovering from my motorcycle accident, I listened to Yes songs over and over, listening to Chris Squire, just dreaming of playing the bass again, because I wasn't sure if I was going to play again. I'd shattered my wrist. I had bars in it. I was scared to death that I wasn't going to be able to play an instrument again. So when I was going through physical therapy, even that was in my mind, just those Chris Squire bass lines, and just remembering laying in the bed night after night, suffering through the pain and trying to heal up from that accident, and wanting so bad to play again. That was a big deal to me, to have Chris there in my psyche. And he's such an inspirational player. I love his stuff in 80s Yes as well. I love his, Shoot High, Aim Low on Big Generator. There's some songs on 90215 as well. They're just So powerful, his bass lines. He was the centerpiece, in my opinion, of the songwriting and the foundation of what Yes was. And he also was a massive, massive influence on Geddy Lee. And I can't put Geddy Lee above Chris Squire because Geddy Lee wouldn't put Geddy Lee above Chris Squire. I mean, I know where the hierarchy of bass players is, and that Chris was Geddy's guy, you know, and I don't think we have a Geddy Lee if there wasn't a Chris Squire. So he's got to be number 2 on the list, or as I said, 1B, because he's almost tied with number 1, but there's only one guy that can be number 1. At the end of the day, in my opinion, the guy that came out of the 60s and made the bass such a presence in hard rock music and such a powerful melodic force, and still some of my favorite bass lines of all time, favorite tone of all time, is John Entwistle of The Who. John Entwistle was without question the greatest rock, hard rock, metal, whatever you want to call it, bassist of all time. The guy was a relentless player with an incredible technique. And if you don't believe me, go listen to The Real Me by The Who and turn it up really loud. Now, Keith Moon was also arguably in the top 3 drummers of all time, right up there with Neil and John Bonham and a couple of other guys. I mean, everybody talks about Keith Moon and that greatest ever. But John was right there with him, man, and he was just as great on the bass as Keith was on the drums. They probably were the greatest rhythm section of all time in hard rock music ever. Nico and Steve Harris, very close. Neil Peart and Geddy Lee, both of them are also right there for me. You could even say Geezer and Bill Ward / Vinny. All the bassists I mentioned, you could even say Chris Squire with Bill Bruford or Alan White. All of those are incredible rhythm sections. But I don't know if anybody, in its rawest form, and in the roots of what it all is, again, it's in the hierarchy, who came first and who really set the tone. John Entwistle set the tone, man. He was just a monster on the bass, and he collected basses. He lived for playing the bass guitar. He had an insane bass collection when he died, kind of like Geddy Lee does. He had an incredible collection, and he just lived and breathed it all of his life, and he loved being a bass player, and he looked like a bass player. And I think when I look at him, I of all the guys that I kind of admire from a look standpoint, it's also John Entwistle. I just think he looked cool as fuck, and his basses always looked cool. He did a great fusion of a Gibson Thunderbird and a Fender Precision bass called the Fenderbird, I believe, and he would do these Frankenstein basses and put things together. Eventually, he teamed up with Warwick and made this crazy Explorer bass called the Buzzard bass that he played a lot later in his life. I highly recommend looking it up if you've never seen it. And just looking at his presence holding his basses, it's just, he's the grand design of a hard rock and rock bass player. He is the prototype, man. Like, he is the guy. Like, the gods chiseled him in stone and said, this is going to be it. Just like Keith Moon was on the drums. And I feel like those two guys together were the most explosive rhythm section of all time. And I strongly believe that all the other 4 bassists in my top 5 list would probably agree with me. I'd be surprised if they didn't. I think John Entwistle is the holy grail of bass players. He's number 1. He's the god tier. And I just highly recommend, if you've never gone in and listened to Quadrophenia really loud and really paid attention to early Who and really just focused on the bass lines. It's easy to focus on Keith. It's easy to focus on Roger and Pete. But John, when you really dive in, some of his mixes got the due they deserved. Some didn't. But you go listen to their live stuff, man, and just, it's like, wow. Like, nobody Nobody played like that guy, man. And for the time era when this was happening, from mid 60s all the way up to like 72, 73, he was setting the foundation for what came right after. Chris Squire a bit too, kind of crossed over, though I feel like John was first, and that's part of the reason he's number one too, and Chris has to be number two. But it was John, Chris, and then Geddy Geezer, and then eventually Steve, and a lot of other guys came along, by the mid-late 70s, and you could argue. And there's other guys too, I mean, I could sit here and go all day long on so many other bassists from that era that influenced me, but I don't think they did it on the grand scale of these guys. And I honestly believe that, these are the top 5 guys. So that's it. That's my top 5 bass players of all time. Maybe it's controversial for some, I don't know, but definitely feel like that's the right order and the right hierarchy, so to speak. And that's it on that front. I'll be doing some bass lines in the coming weeks. I'm going to be going through the whole White Wizzard catalog and look forward to that. And keep your eyes peeled on the YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't to the new band page. And we do have new music and a lot of new news coming very shortly. So we'll see you guys soon. Rock.